everybody, and welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. I'm Sara.
And I'm Ali.
And it's a big day today because this is our final regular episode until post-Olympics, but fret not. We've got Olympic coverage already started, dropping every Monday until the tournament starts, so you will not be without us.
Yeah, you can't get rid of us that easy.
That's right.
So we have already dropped our preview of Group A and Group B. Group C will be dropping next Monday, and that will be us talking about all of the teams that are competing in this year's tournament. We're then going to hit you with an extra special predictions episode where we run through how we think the tournament's going to play out, who's going to win, who's going to get the golden boot, the golden glove, etc. And then once the tournament actually kicks off, you will be getting your recap episodes where we give you the thrills, the spills, the absolute everything that is going on in this Olympic tournament.
That's right. We're dropping an episode during the tournament after every game day. So the tournament kicks off with match day 1 on Thursday, July 25th. We're dropping the next an episode Friday, the 26th, to cover that full match day 1, so on and so forth. It's going to be a blast, and we love tournaments. And I'm just going to add on here, if you are a Spotify user and you didn't see Group B drop this past Monday, we had some weird technical issues with Spotify, but hopefully by the time you're listening to this, we figured it out, because it's up there on Apple Podcasts. And for some reason, Spotify just didn't want to post that episode for us. But enough about the Olympics. We are here for our final regular episode. We've got tons of NWSL. We've got NWSL La Liga MX to talk about, USL Super League, and more updates over in Europe, because the transfer window is transfer windowing, as they say. So let's do it.
So we sort of previewed it last week, but our game of the week has to be the game against the two undefeated Titans. That is Kansas City versus Orlando. We thought it might be an almighty clash. And for the first half an hour, I was unconvinced, but then it went off. So, do we have two undefeated teams, Sarah, or has it gone to just one?
The NWSL the chaos popped off for sure in this game. If you tuned in for chaos, you got it. And if you feel like you didn't get it, I think you need to recalibrate what chaos means. I think the NWSL has done you dirty. Let's recalibrate it. There certainly was chaos in this game. But yes, Orlando are the only remaining undefeated team. Now Kansas City's unbeaten streak ended on Saturday because of Orlando. And actually, Orlando took it 2-1. Not only did Orlando get their 17th win, tie the record set by Kansas City, but they also were able to end Kansas City's streak at 17. Just a massive game. But we do have to take a moment, Ali, because we did predictions on this game. And before we even get into this game, I think the most important thing to say here is that I was correct. And your heart was correct. Your head was wrong, but your heart was right.
Yeah, I didn't know how Orlando were going to do it. And then, yeah, they absolutely proved me wrong and were absolutely phenomenal. You know, it may not have been their best game, like technically, and we'll get on to that. But you know what? They certainly had a lot of heart and a lot of perseverance. And there was a lot of controversy, unfounded controversy, if I'm honest. But yeah, no, it was definitely a full-on proper NWSL clash game.
I mean, you said it, so I have to ask, what is the unfounded controversy that you are referring to?
The controversy is people think that Marta celebrated too hard, and I don't think that's a thing. Like,
I have not even seen that, and I'm glad I haven't.
Like, her team were a spoiler, went down to 10 players, and then they drew, and then she got a penalty, and she buried the penalty, one of the best penalties I've seen in the NWSL. And she just, was kissing the badge and properly going for it. And I think, you know what? Marta is an OG at Orlando. She's been with them for so long. She's been with them through the ups, the downs, and the very downs. And to finally be in a team that is performing so well, that is matching her caliber, I think she deserves to have that passion and that fight for when she scores what it was essentially the game-winning goal. So I just think you're all being a bit, I don't know what the word or what I think you're being. I just think you need to let it go.
I'm going to chalk that up to like, hopefully that's just the negative side of social media that we try to not interact with anyways, because that's utterly absurd to me for all the reasons you just said. But also, if you're going to kiss the badge, you're going to celebrate a goal. This is the game to do it in. This is the clash of the undefeated teams. Like, there were so many stakes here, and it felt like that in the game. It was physical. People wanted this on the field. It felt almost like a final in a way. And so if you're going to kiss the badge in some game, this is the game to do it. And just because she scored however many goals she scored in her career doesn't mean she's not allowed to celebrate anymore. That's ridiculous to me. I thought when you said unfounded controversy, I thought you were talking about the red card that was issued. And I was like, hold on, I thought that you didn't think that should be one. We're going to get on to that because, of course, Orlando Pride went down to 10 players right at the end of the first half. They played the entirety of the second half with 10 players, still managed to pull out the win. For me, I think the headline of this game, the overhead of this game, if you will, is that quite honestly, Orlando was the better side from the start. They played with 10 players, like I referenced, for 45 minutes, and they still were able to pull out a win against a great Kansas City offense. And that truly speaks volumes because, listen, at the moment, the way I see this is that their attacking presence on either side, Kansas City and Orlando, it's relatively equal in terms of the threat that it brings. But Orlando, I think, is a more comprehensive team across the board. It's their defense that obviously stepped up and won this game, which that's the reason I called Orlando to win this game. They've got the best defense in the league that doesn't get enough credit because the headlines are Barbara Banda, Marta, and rightfully so, but that's a big part of it. And also maybe a bigger part of it that even gets fewer headlines is that this is a team that is a unit. They play within a system and they've figured out how to play in a dynamic and creative way within that system. And that's why they're so successful. And I think a massive shout out to head coach Seb Hines, who's done an incredible job with Orlando for that. They play like they're the best coach team in this league right now.
100%. I think we've referenced before that they've had a really not great time in the last few years. We saw a lot of key players move on, and there was a lot of talk about how it wasn't very positive to be there over the past few years. And they are probably the most cohesive team we've got currently in the NWSL because each player knows what they're doing. Each player knows what part they play. They've got some great players on the bench that can slot into the system that they have. And let's talk about that defense because it is just so well oiled. I want to give a shout out to Sams. I think Sams has been really excellent these last games and really held it down for this game. The pairing of her and Strom.
Yeah. We've talked about the pairing of Sams and Strom and how they're not getting enough credit, I think, for holding down that back line, especially when Carrie Lawrence, who plays right back for Orlando, got that second yellow. You kicked this off by saying that nothing really happened and then everything popped off at around 30 minutes. Couldn't be more correct. Barbara Banda scored in the 37th minute, and it felt like literally on the next play, Chawinga came back the other way and scored for Kansas City to equalize. And then just 3 minutes after that, right before the end of the half, Carrie Lawrence picked up her second yellow card, got sent off, and then the half concluded and Orlando played the remaining 45 minutes with 10 players. And quite honestly, I don't remember that first yellow. I really don't. That for me probably means that I thought it was warranted. I definitely remember the second yellow. And for me, it was a clear second yellow. It was coming into the back of a player. First of all, you're coming in from behind. Second of all, when you do that, you're getting player only, no ball. Even if she did manage to get a foot on the ball, it was because she went through the back of the legs of whatever Kansas City player she went through. It's a clear yellow card for me. And that happens. Like, I'm not going to berate her for it. It's a terrible feeling when you're that person. But this was a really physical game. And quite honestly, I'm a little surprised that was the only second yellow we saw. I thought Kansas City's Claire Lavoguez was getting into it. She was all over Marta. She was all over everybody. I thought Lavalguez could have potentially gotten herself into some trouble that game. So it was just one of those games for me, and I think it was warranted.
What I think this game really shows is that they both had watched each other and knew who to pin back, who to mark. You saw it all the time that the players were all over Banda, all over Marta. You saw it the other way around with Pride being all over Kansas City's front line and really trying to nullify that threat. And that's why it was such a fun game to watch. Yes, it wasn't the goal fest we thought it might be, but it was probably one of the best games.
Yeah.
Because of that clearly studied, let's go for it. And the better side won. The better side won in the end.
It certainly felt like a goal fest for a moment, though, when Banda scored and then Chawinga came back the other way. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's happening. All right, before we move on, I just feel like a couple more random points from this game. Morehouse, Orlando's goalkeeper, I think she's been a standout this whole year. I believe Anna Morehouse just got her first call up to the England national team, which is huge for her. It was really based on the play from her this whole season, but I don't think she had her best game. Any shot that came her way that she caught, she was bobbling, and it led to multiple opportunities for Kansas City, and they absolutely could have capitalized on one of them. I never like shouting at the goalkeeper when they had a bad game, but it was noticeable to me because of how well she's been playing this whole season. And then along with that, I think, I've spoken a lot about, I think, the difference between these two teams. I'll add my final point in the difference between these two teams in this game is that it felt like for Kansas City, Chawinga was really the only attacking threat at times. They had a hard time getting other players into dangerous goal-scoring positions, and Orlando didn't have that problem. Yes, it could have been Barbara Banda, but it also could have been Adriana or Angelina or Marta or Yates. They all found themselves in goal-scoring opportunities, and I just feel like Kansas City had a harder time doing that in this game, most likely because of the lockdown defense of Orlando Pride.
So the final thing about this matchup is it was a massive test for both these teams, and we expect that their next match, which will be in Orlando, will be completely different. That game will take place on September 13th, which is just the fourth game back from the Olympic break in season that is happening. So it's going to be exciting. I'm excited.
Speaking of Olympic break, let's talk what's happening with the NWSL while they go on Olympic break, because it's not vacation time for these players, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you want to look at it.
So, for those that are not aware, the NWSL and La Liga MX have come together and have created this summer tournament, which I believe has a stupid name because, no offense, all the American tournaments have stupid names.
I don't know what it is. I think it's the Summer Cup.
There you go. Stupid name.
It's right to the point, though. At least it's not something obscure.
So it's going to be 20 teams, 14 NWSL plus the top 6 from La Liga MX. So who are the 6 teams that we have got from La Liga MX?
Yes, the 6 highest ranked teams from the 2023 Apertura and Clausura seasons: Tigres, Club America, Chivas de Guadalajara, Rayadas de Monterrey, Pachuca, and Tijuana.
The big question is why? Because we could have given these NWSL teams some time off, some resting, but no. In fact, we've got instead this really fun tournament. So why has it been brought together?
The idea for the Summer Cup originated with the NWSL chief sporting director, who really says that, I can just read this quote because I think she said it so well, quote, envisioned a collaborative competition to strengthen ties between the NWSL and La Liga MX Femenil, unquote. So I think that that's a really great way to describe this, because we talk a lot about how there's such an easy competition between clubs in England, Spain, all across Europe, really because of the proximity. And we talked a lot about this also on an international stage when we had the W Gold Cup. And the idea was to get these nations playing against each other in the Americas. And now it's the same type of thing, but put it in club football. And I think that this is so great because these schedules align. The NWSL schedule aligns pretty well with La Liga MX schedule. And we've seen a lot of times NWSL tries to do a crossover. There is a crossover even with, an English team or a Spanish team. And it just doesn't work because one team is in preseason or one team is in mid form. It just doesn't work. So I think that the more that we can get this happening, the more we're going to develop the club game in the Americas and get people playing across the Americas. There's a new league starting in Canada. Maybe they'll become a part of it. I think it's really great.
It is huge. So let's get into some details. So there is going to be 5 groups, and I believe this has been organized as what most tournaments are by region. And then each group will then get one Mexican team. There is one group that has 2 Mexican teams, which is Group C. And then from then on, it will be only of the 5 group winners, it's only the top 4 on points that will advance on to the semi-finals. There's no quarterfinals, none of that. It's literally group stage. And even if you win your group, you might not progress because it depends on how the other groups have done.
This is so fun. We usually only get these teams playing each other in preseason matches. So it'll be fun to see these teams in mid-season form and get to look at the competition difference and levels across the board. The top 4 teams progress to the knockout rounds, and then there's a big break, and weirdly, the final is like at the end of October. So this whole thing, with the exception of the final, is being played during the Olympics, is what's going to happen. Also, notably, all of these games are going to be in the United States, except for when Tigres take on Pachuca, and that will be at Estadio Universitario in Monterrey. I wish I could travel to that one. That's honestly the one I want to be at the most. All right. And so that's it. I mean, I think it might be worth noting, we're really excited for this because of all of the reasons we just mentioned. This is good for the game. I think there's obviously an upside and a downside for players because it is hard to take a little bit of time off, continue training, but not play a game and really keep that going. Or it's hard to just take some time off and then try to get back into midseason. But it does need to be noted, this is just more load on these players. And I can imagine this being something that they just wish they could go sit on a beach for a while instead.
I would say so. If you want to check this out, it will be on CBS and TUDN for all of the Spanish speakers out there, or it will be on NWSL Plus, which is available to all international viewers.
Let's go around the world, around the world, around the world.
To Euros qualifiers. It is the final stages this weekend. In Group A, it is likely that it will be Norway and the Netherlands that will go through automatically. In Group B, Spain have already qualified with 4 wins out of 4. Denmark are the favourites to go through second in that group. However, in Group C, it's truly anyone's game. France are top at the moment, but need to beat Sweden and Ireland. Sweden and England need to beat each other and then win their other group in order to go through automatically.
The Frauen Bundesliga have announced that they will kick off on August 24th. Sounds like it's far away, but it's really not. With the league expanding, it will be especially exciting as 3 teams are set to be promoted, and we will continue to update you and around the world as to when other leagues all across the globe are starting in the fall.
Have you checked out Total Football Analysis yet? TotalFootballAnalysis.com provides research analysis on loads of football, including the women's game. Want all the stats in one place instead of drowning in a mountain of tabs? Want to explore key matchups and the tactics from both teams? Total Football Analysis provides the stats and analysis to help you learn more about the beautiful game. We have a special discount for listeners of the Women's Soccer Show. At checkout, type WOSO10 to get a full year for just €10. That's €40 of the yearly subscription. Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and type WOSO10 at checkout.
Staying stateside. So we had lots of questions about the USL Super League when we mentioned it in Around the World a couple of weeks ago. And so we thought we would give you the lowdown about what this league is, what it means for women's football, both stateside and worldwide. But the first question on everyone's lips is, why is it the USL Super League? Sarah, take it away.
Okay, there's a few things to say here. First of all, What is the USL Super League? I'll say that first, and then I'll explain why you can't just call it the USL and you have to call it the USL Super League. So first and foremost, the USL Super League is a brand new Division 1 league that is kicking off this fall. And when I say Division 1, it means that they have obtained Division 1 status, which is the same status as the NWSL. In other words, fully professional first tier. So, yes, whatever you're thinking is probably correct. It means that there will be two of the same type of league in the United States. There will be a professional women's soccer league called the NWSL, and there will be a professional women's soccer league called the USL Super League. Now, why do you have to call it the USL Super League and not the USL? The USL is a larger organization. It's called United Soccer League. That is an umbrella that encompasses a ton of different leagues. Historically, this has been very male focused. So, for example, for the men, they have USL League 1, USL League 2. Think of it very similar to the structure that you have over in England, where you have first division, second division. That is what the USL is for men. People may have heard of the USL W League. This is part of their women's structure, and the W League specifically is a league under the USL that is pre-professional only. So you cannot have professional status to play in it. This usually means that college players who are of amateur status get to play in it. Players who played in college but didn't quite go pro get to play in that over the summer. And it's been growing and making a lot of noise over the past years. And then, of course, within the past year, the USL announced that they would start this USL Super League, which is essentially going to sit on top of the USL W League, which you can think of as the W League will be a pre-professional amateur league that can feed this professional league at the top. And I think that there's a big distinction between what the USL is trying to build with the Super League and what the NWSL is doing. And we can get into that too as to what really is the big difference and why it's important.
So why is it important to have this second league, and what is the big major differences between the two?
So I think the first question, why it's important to have this second league, I think is one that a lot of people are asking, because a lot of people hear it and think immediately that it's probably a negative thing, that it'll rival the NWSL, that'll just pull viewership away from the NWSL, and the NWSL can't handle that right now. I think that let's get into last, because I want to lay out a couple things about the USL Super League and how it's structured before we get into talking about why it actually could be a good thing that there's going to be two competing leagues right now. So first and foremost, the schedule of the NWSL is different than the USL Super League. So the USL Super League is going to play a schedule that aligns more to the international calendar. You can also think of that as a schedule that aligns more to what the WSL, the other Super League, or European clubs play. So they'll play August through mid-December. They'll kick off this August 17th and they'll play through December 14th. And then they'll break. They'll go on a break all the way through February, and then they'll kick back off for the spring portion at the end of February. And it's essentially a way to solve aligning the schedule more internationally with trying to not play in the dead of winter in the United States. So that's first and foremost. Second of all, what the USL are trying to do is use the existing pipeline that they have that the NWSL doesn't have. The NWSL is a professional league and they draft from the college system. The USL has a pipeline. They're developing youth teams. They have the USLW League. They're trying to create a pipeline in this country that essentially not just goes through youth, but also bridges the gap between college and professional. Because right now, there's only 14 teams that you can be drafted to in this country. And that kind of leads me on to my explanation as to why this is actually a good thing. And yes, it might rival the NWSL, but I implore people to think about it in this way. And that is the collegiate system in this country, the women's soccer collegiate system is incredible. There's top talent everywhere. There's almost 30,000 women playing NCAA women's soccer right now. And if you look at the statistics, there's 14 teams. There's about 48 draft picks. That's 0.7% of NCAA athletes going pro. Under 1% of these athletes even have the chance to try to go pro. And it's different everywhere else. You look at any men's sports in this country, there's just way more teams. There's way more roster slots. So essentially what the USL is saying is there's so much talent here. By doing this, we're going to help the pipeline so that we can bridge the gap between college and players that can go pro, because a lot of people fall off in that in between that have the talent to go pro. And if for whatever reason, they just fall off. And second, they're going to use this pipeline to just help develop soccer in this country. So for me, I think you can make the argument that, yes, it rivals the NWSL, but you can also make the argument that 14 teams is just simply not enough. And this is going to be a net positive for women's soccer developing in this country, period.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we've also seen some names that have played in the NWSL and the WSL coming over to the USL Super League. Brooke Hendricks, we mentioned before, is currently playing at Tampa. Jade Moore signed recently. So we are seeing some names that are going to help grow this system. And we have a pyramid over here in the UK, and we have divisions, and it does help because, like you said, 14 teams is not enough. So having these divisions for teams, there's so many more teams they can play on. And I think this is just a great start of growth for that. Where can people watch this wonderful league?
They announced recently that all games are going to be streaming on Peacock here in the US. To be determined where it will be internationally, if it will be. I haven't seen anything for that yet. But all games are on Peacock here in the US, which is great for anybody with a Peacock subscription. I think the last thing that maybe we can add is, where are these teams playing?
Yes, let's do it. What teams, where are they going?
So there's going to be 8 inaugural teams for this coming inaugural season, starting this August 17th, going to be in Brooklyn, New York, Charlotte, North Carolina, the Dallas-Fort Worth area in Texas, Fort Lauderdale in Florida, Lexington, Kentucky, Spokane, Washington, Tampa, Florida, and Washington, D.C. There are a few markets that do overlap with NWSL here, but then there's also quite a few that just simply don't. And the ones that do overlap with NWSL, it is a big, big market. For example, Brooklyn, New York rivals Gotham FC, of course. Washington, D.C., Washington Spirit, we know they're there. The D.C. area is also huge. And then there are 8 teams that are probably set to join for the following 2025 season. So the USL Super League is hoping to double their number of teams from first year to second year. And the way that they're going to do that is quite literally tapping into their existing pipeline. They're not building new teams and having teams buy in like the NWSL. They're taking a team, for example, the Oakland Soul, play in the USL W League, and they've been dominating. And so instead of creating a brand new team, the Oakland Soul are set to be a new team in 2025 that will simply advance into the Super League. And if you really want to hear more, we had a great interview with the president of the USL, Amanda Vandervoort. She came on our podcast just about a year ago, right when the news was announced about the USL Super League. Go back in our episodes and listen to that. It's a great interview. She's fantastic, and you'll get all of the information that you didn't get from us right here, if there is any. And finally, over across the pond to England, the other Super League, the initial Super League, the WSL, the Women's Super League, formerly known as the FAWSL, never to be known as the BWSL. I stand on that. It's the off season, and like we said at the top, the transfer window, it's transfer windowing, and there have been big announcements. We're keeping you up to date every week on movement, and every week there's just more and more to say. So, Allie, should we start with the big headline names here? What has been announced since the last episode that we dropped?
So I think the biggest and probably the most surprising one is that Fran Kirby has signed with Brighton. Remember, Brighton don't have a head coach at the moment, so she is really basing it on what the club can offer her. I think there was rumours that she was going to head over to North London and go to Spurs. I think that was definitely in the pipeline. but agent Sotters Dottier, who she played with at Chelsea, has clearly been on the phone. Anybody who hasn't seen it, there's a really gorgeous video of Fran ringing Maria to let her know that she's joined Brighton.
That's so cute.
It is really adorable. But yeah, this is huge for Brighton. Like, they have already lost Katie Robinson. It's likely they're going to lose Elizabeth Turland. So to have someone of Kirby's caliber to come in, have that experience, still got so much game left in her, is absolutely massive. Brighton fans, you must be absolutely buzzing with yourself.
It's honestly wild. I was stunned to see it. And yeah, I can imagine Brighton fans over the moon, because what a signing.
So the next one we're going to talk about is Dominique Janssen has signed for Manchester United. United fans, be glad, be grateful. You will have at least one player playing in a red and black shirt next season. This one, I think, took a lot of people by surprise. She's left Wolfsburg. We knew that she was looking for another move. Coming back to WSL, she obviously played at Arsenal for a very long time. Again, she's bringing that sense of experience, which they've lost with Zellum obviously moving on. And I think this is a big move for both. I think she was underutilized at Wolfsburg. She's been fantastic at international level for the Netherlands. So she is going to bring that wealth of experience to Man United. And I think that's fantastic. It's a great move for Man United. We'll see if it's a great move for Janssen.
I was going to say, do you think that this is a good move for her? Because I think people were shocked to see this, because it came quite literally on the heels of the announcement that the women were being moved out of their trading facility, all of that we covered last week. First of all, it does show that United can still sign players, or maybe this was done before that news was announced. I don't know. What do you think of this, her going to Manchester United? Are we going to have this question for any player that United signs?
I think we are, to be honest. I think it is a great move for Man United. It will be seen if it's a great move for Janssen. I clearly get she's going to go for playing time. As I said, she was underutilized at Wolfsburg. But is Man United really the right fit? We reported last week that agents are telling their players don't go there because of things such as they've been moved out of their training facilities. News broke this week that they are trying to negotiate with St George's Park to allow the women to train at St George's Park. Now, for anybody who's not in the UK that doesn't realise that, it's 40 odd miles away from Manchester and where they're supposed to be training, because it is in Burton-on-Trent, which is in the middle of the country. Manchester is obviously more north. So it's ridiculous that you're expecting your women's team to travel 40 odd miles
every day.
It'll be an 80-mile round trip. And remember, guys, it is the men's facilities that have closed down. So they're not discussing that the men go and train at St George's Park. It's obvious where their priorities lie. So I am yet to be convinced whether this is a great move for Janssen.
All right, moving on. Other big names, Ali.
Yeah, from one duchy to another. The mystery of where Vivianne Miedema end up is a mystery no more, and has officially signed at Manchester City. This is huge for Manchester City. They are going to be so dangerous next season when you've got Bunny up front. You've got Hempo who can play up front. You've now got Miedema who's going to be pulling those strings. You've got Yui Hasegawa who's been pivotal to them in their midfield. Rord is on her way back. They are going to be dangerous. They are going to be an absolute nightmare to try and defend. And you know what? A few have questioned why she's gone to a rival and not to Europe, but she's turned around and said her partner is in the UK, her dog is in the UK. She is prioritizing her mental health, and to do that is to stay close to both of those things. So Manchester City was the obvious choice. So I think it's going to be a good move for her, because she wasn't happy at Arsenal, wasn't performing well at Arsenal because she was unhappy. So let's see how this plays out in Sky Blue.
I think that the combination of her and Buddy Shaw, I think that with their styles, they're going to play very well together. And that's, like you said, a very dangerous prospect. And yeah, I mean, you can never fault a player for wanting a new challenge. She'd been at Arsenal for a very long time for various reasons. It seems like it had just really plateaued and she needed something new. And why not sign up to play along the top goal scorer of the WSL alongside Bunny Shaw? I think that's going to be a blast for her. I personally I'm very sad about it, but I am also kind of happy that I get to watch them play together. So I'm okay.
And just very quickly, some brief ins and outs. Alicia Lehmann has officially moved out of the WSL and is going to Juve in Italy. Sandy Baltimore is coming into the WSL and has signed for Chelsea. Leopold has moved on to Real Madrid. And a big loss for Everton. Hannah Benison is also moving on to Juve. That she was a Swedish star for them. Got some great goals, a young star at 21. And so that is a massive loss for Everton for her to go off to Europe.
And that is it for our last regular non-Olympic episode until post-Olympics. It feels really wild, Allie.
Yeah, it's come around so quickly. It's exciting.
The WSL is already on break. Everybody is headed into Olympic break, and we are headed into Olympic coverage.
So remember to keep checking your feed every Monday where we'll have our preview episodes. We then check out our coverage during the tournament. We will have an ep for you after every single match day. Make sure you check out our Patreon because we will have extra content on there with extended episodes, fits and kits, all of that good stuff. And that just keeps us going.
All right. And that is it for us here at the Women's Soccer Show. We will see you on Monday, the following Monday, and then we'll see you on Friday after match day 1 of the Olympics. Let's get excited, everybody. I already am. And that's it for us here at the Women's Soccer Show. I've been Sarah.
And I've been Ali.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
This podcast was edited by Monkey Hill Media. Visit monkeyhillmedia.com for more information.